and I was terrified at the prospect of losing her. Let me stop here. Hey, welcome to day 2 of my new series of trying to deal with overwhelming, just effing out of control anxiety. So far this morning, it's hit and miss. I woke up, I felt a little kind of rough, probably because I woke up way too early. My toddler came in the room, and I think at about 4:30, he was done sleeping, and he decided it was time for everyone to floss. Turned on all the lights, went to the bathroom, pulled out the floss container, and just started yanking the floss out of there as fast as he could before I could get over to him. I know one of my big problems is sleep. If my sleep's interrupted, that's like one of the huge keys, huge triggers for me. I've discovered something. I've discovered that, you know what? When it comes down to it, at the end of the day, I'm just a big bag of chemicals. And this big bag of chemicals needs to keep moving in order to be happy. If I sit still for too long, it's not good. Right now, in the back of the truck, the whole bed is full of cardboard. I'm taking that to a recycling center. I'm going to head back afterwards, and I've got some other stuff lined up for the day. But you know, getting back to the idea of being just a big walking chemistry set, if I get off in terms of sleep, that's the big one, or not enough exercise, and if I were to pan down and you could see my waistline right now, you'd see that's also a big issue. See what I did there? And finally, nutrition. If I eat too many carbs, although I love carbs, that's also, in the long run and more slowly, gets to me. And when all 3 of those factors are out of alignment, this beaker boils over. It's hard. So moving forward, my new goal, long-term goal, and I wish I would have started this sooner, is to keep all the chemicals floating around up there in perfect check to the best of my knowledge. And I have to admit, I don't know exactly how to do that. I have some vague notions, but I've never really made a conscious effort of, even when I'm feeling good, to try to stay healthy and maintain the balance. Because I'll tell you what, when you've got anxiety, especially when it comes on in the form of a huge panic attack, you want to do everything you can to make it stop in the moment, and as soon as it's over, you want to run away from the problem like it's a huge steamy dump. It's like you've gone out into the woods and you've taken the biggest poop in your life, and all you want to do is distance yourself from that. You don't want to think about it, you don't want to deal with it, you just want to have it be gone forever and ignore that it ever happened. And, well, I'm 50, still having the problem, so guess how that's worked? Yeah, anyway. All right, next stop, recycling center. I did manage to go for a run this morning, even though I was still pretty tired from the night. And you know, that's kind of a hit and miss thing, because what I've noticed about myself is that sometimes running releases endorphins for me and makes me feel good. Other times, especially when I'm already stressed going into it, it can be a lot. And the stress kind of, I don't know, it like builds up, and the exercise just adds to that. So running actually sometimes makes my anxiety worse. I'm hoping that if I push myself, even if in the short term I feel worse, then in the long term the running will actually, what's the right word? Pay off? No, that's not it. I'm hoping that my body will essentially get used to that, used to the pressure, and be able to compensate, like develop the tolerance almost. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. All right, I wanted to empty out the truck bed so when I get home I can put our paddle boards into it. I'm taking them out to Grants Pass, to my parents' place, for more of a long-term storage. And I know you're thinking, okay, great, we're gonna watch you run around and do just a bunch of random errands. Au contraire, all of these errands, everything I'm doing today is specifically intended to kind of help me feel better. And get some other stuff done too, but mostly I wanna, well, let me back up. So, I'm trying something new. I've never done this before anywhere I've lived, but I'm trying really hard to organize and set up my home, that Eric and I share right now, as much as possible and customize it and do everything we need to make it ours. Now, I mean, that might sound like common sense, like everyone does that, right? Well, no. I mean, in the past, in my first marriage, when I lived with my partner, there's a lot of stuff I didn't care about. I'd just throw like things on a shelf, or I would not really care about, putting art up on the walls or any sort of decorations. I wouldn't care about like what things or furniture went in the house. It was a lot of compromise. But in this house, I really want to go the extra mile to make everything perfect, because I'm trying to turn the home into sort of like this fortress of happiness, this place where I know I can go and everything's exactly the way I want it. The more that I customize and the more effort I put into the house right now, it will make me feel less anxious. I'll feel like the house is my one safe place. So anyway, the paddle boards are getting out of there in order to put in more the Costco Gorilla storage racks to create better organization. And that's going to give us a lot more space to hold food, kid supplies, kid clothes, things like that. So that's the big picture for today. And plus also, like I said earlier, the more I'm doing stuff, the less I'm sitting at home doing nothing. And this reminds me of something else that I recently just discovered. I know exactly where fear and anxiety live when they're not in my head. I know precisely where they are. They live in that chair, and this sofa. You see, whenever I sit anywhere for too long in the house and don't move, don't get exercise, don't get things done, the fear and the anxiety crawl out of these pieces of furniture and get in here. So that's why it's so important for me to always just keep moving and getting stuff done. And so far it's working. I'm actually starting to feel pretty good. So things are turning around, which is great. All right, time to get paddleboards loaded up. I have the paddleboards loaded in the back of the truck right now, and I'm actually on the way to a counseling session. I've got a weekly, just talk counselor that I see, and this will be my second session of the week. I saw him on Tuesday right after I had a huge panic attack on Saturday. Today's my normally scheduled session. I'm really looking forward to chatting with him and seeing what he thinks about why, since Saturday, have I been on edge. And as an update, I was doing well earlier this morning, but I'm back into the sort of the beginnings. I can feel the panic and the anxiety sort of starting to set in again. But being much more aware and trying to figure out why this is going on, I also feel myself being really, really tired. Oh, hey, it's Erica. I'll be right back. All right, she's on the way to pick up Benton from his Montessori, but just arrived at my counseling place. But I was saying, I really have noticed that the more tired I am, the more anxiety just really creeps in. And I was reading about that. And so apparently what happens is when you're sleep deprived, there's two things going on in your brain. First, the amygdala, which controls sort of the fight or flight response, I believe, or emotions, tends to overreact. It tends to flare up, it gets very stimulated, and it makes a lot of feels happen. Then also at the same time, the prefrontal cortex, where you do a lot of the higher processing and a lot of the rational thinking, it tones down. It gets sleepy. So it's going to bed. And the combination of the two means you have a lot more emotions going on without the ability to reason through it. And I really think that's my case. I think that just describes what's going on in my head to a T. Because, like I said, I get anxious, but I also do know that when I'm sleepy, I can't think as fast, or I just sit here and I don't have as many deep thoughts as I normally do. And it's just the way it is. So, and that reminds me of another thing. So, my counselor on Tuesday said that anxiety and emotion is a sign of pushing you in a certain direction. So all these feelings that I'm having, even if they're out of control over the top, what are they pushing me to do? That's the real question. And quite clearly, one of the things they're pushing me to do is to take better care of myself. I think a lot of people out there might be in the same boat. There's no doubt about that. I have not been taking good care of myself, especially for the last 2 years. I mean, I think Tom Hanks recently said that he's in the best shape he's been in years because he no longer has children living under the roof. Right there with you, Tom. Okay, I got to get in. Okay, I just got done with my session, and I'll tell you what, it was a really, really good one. We were talking more about why I had this really big anxiety attack on Saturday, and then why, I'm still like fired up and it's continuing to today. And he was saying, well, think about it from an evolutionary point of view. If you were chased by a bear or something really bad happened to you, your body's going to amp you up. You don't have time to write a thesis on whether or not you should be scared. You have to be scared and you have to run. But if you were living in the woods, your body wants to keep you in a heightened state of alert because who knows, maybe that bear's still around. It doesn't want you to relax and sit back and think, okay, everything's safe now. It's a survival mechanism. And I'm like, okay, I get that. So I'm still kind of, it's like when you hit your leg. Let's say you hit your leg really hard and you get a Charlie horse. The next day, and even the day after that and the day after that, you're not still hitting your leg, but it's still going to hurt. That's kind of the same idea, is that injury, the mental injury, continues. But here's what's more important, and here's what I think is a lot more interesting. One of the reasons that I was so kind of just out of it on Saturday and I was so just anxious and completely collapsed is I'm 50, all right? My mom's 84, and recently she had breast cancer removed. I'm like, okay, and she's going to be fine. I know she's going to be fine. But that reminded me of her mortality. And the night before I had my emotional collapse, I got 2 hours of sleep, all right? So I was not in a good state. I was thinking about the idea of not having my mom around, and this is, I know how it sounds, like you're 50 and you're worried about missing your mom. Yeah, I was, okay? It hit me hard. It hit me really, really hard. And I was terrified at the prospect of losing her. Let me stop here. What my therapist was saying is that I am attaching the unknown of not having my mom around, like that. I've never not had them around before, so that's a big unknown for me. And I'm inserting the worst possible thing that's going to happen, which is my parents are going to be gone. I'm going to be miserable and unhappy and just completely distraught for the rest of my life, and then I'm going to die. That's literally the thought I was having on Saturday. It was. That's not at all realistic. That's not what's actually going to happen, but that's what I focused on because I was taking the unknown and not letting it go. Second of all, and this is kind of a personality flaw that I've learned about myself, I can't control when anyone dies. I can't control when I die, when my parents die, but I'm not happy unless I can control everything in my life. To me, having my parents get sick and pass away someday is something that I've got to control in order for me to stay happy. Do you see just how nuts that thinking is? I can't do that. Yet there's a part of my personality that says, oh yeah, well you'd better figure it out. And I've been stuck in that mental loop for days. So I need to learn and accept that there's a lot outside of my life, or a lot in my life outside of my control. And I'm not able to do that yet. And then finally, we ended on a good note because my therapist said, hey, look, let's say when your parents pass away, who's to say it's a bad thing? He used the analogy of you can fight against waves or you can learn to surf. So I took that to mean it's like, look, my parents are going to pass away at some point anyway. My mom's going to die, my dad's going to die. I can either fight that, be unhappy with it, or take it as a challenge to try to make it as beneficial and mean as much as possible. He's helped me reframe my thinking into, instead of like saying, oh, I'm going to be miserable when they're gone, I'm going to say, how can I actually take their passing to be something that's going to make me grow as a person? And yes, there will be loss. I will miss them. But how can I come away from this as a better person and possibly even happier in the long run? That's going to sound completely callous, but what I mean by happier in the long run is one of the things my parents have provided for me forever is security. You know, like I got my mom and dad there. If something bad happens, I can give them a call. We're good friends. Can I become more secure, a much more secure, independent person after they're gone? Let's say there's a hard thing that goes through my life. Let's say something terrible happens, like one of my children dies, or if I can get through something like that by myself, wouldn't that give me an overwhelming sense of independence? Wouldn't that give me like this feeling of security that I probably don't have right now? So yeah, that's the kind of stuff we talked about in there, and it's going to take me days to process everything, but it was good. It was a good session. It really helped me reframe what's happening now, and I feel calmer inside because of that. But I'm going to keep busy, and I'm going to keep going and do as much as I can today and get as much done. So let's go drop off some paddle boards. God, the weather here in Grants Pass is like the opposite of how my anxiety has gone today. I went from sunny in Medford to cloudy here in Grants Pass, where I went from kind of not feeling good this morning to sort of happy right now. But anyway, I'm here to get the stuff out of storage, the storage racks I need, and there's a cat on the roof. Our storage racks are totally disassembled, so I got to bring them out piece by piece. But one thing you may be asking yourself is, hey, why don't you go in and see a doctor and get anxiety meds, you know? Well, that's a good question, and I have. In fact, I was maxed out on Prozac for 4 years, 5 years, I don't know. And at first it kind of worked, but over the last year especially, it just lost its effectiveness. It wasn't doing anything. So I did go back to my doctor, got the prescription changed, and I'm now on something called Prestique. Never heard of it before. It's supposed to be the latest and greatest new thing, but it hasn't kicked in. I don't feel any effects yet. In fact, I feel worse than I did before the Prozac wore off. So for me at least, meds aren't the answer, or at least not the long-term solution. I hear that's the way it works for any medication, where the meds work great at first, but then over time, they lose their effectiveness. Like with SSRIs, by definition, an SSRI blocks serotonin reuptake. So the body adapts by creating more serotonin receptors, and therefore kind of defeats the benefits or the purpose of the drug. And I really think that's what's happened with me. So for me, drugs aren't the answer, and that's why I've really taken it into my own hands to try to do something about this. All right, got the storage racks loaded up, said hi to my folks, heading back home, and oh my God, the fog is just moving in. Here, check this out. That's going to be crappy to drive in as soon as it gets dark. I'm glad I'm heading out now. By the way, did I mention that my aunt thinks I might have seasonal affective disorder? What? An environment like this? Alright, it's late. Still not out of the woods, but that session with my counselor today was good when he explained what was going on and why I was feeling the way I was feeling. I really don't know what else to do other than just keep staying the course and keep trying the things I've been trying, of working hard every day to improve myself and be a better person. I don't mind doing the work, but I don't know what path to take to get rid of anxiety and the stress once and for all. I don't even know if there is a path, but I just know I'm going to keep trying. And when I wake up tomorrow, I don't know if I'm going to be feeling good or if it's going to be another one of those days with tears. So I've kind of created like a list of rules in my head, and I've actually written down on how to live, and I'm going to follow those rules because it gives me something to focus on and like a strict set of steps when times get bad. I don't have to think about what to do because I know my decision making gets like way off when I'm not feeling my best. So one of those rules is get to bed as early as possible. All right, you guys have a good night.